Hello, Dream Team. Welcome back to our podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, beautiful people, welcome to another incredible installment of Here's a Thought with the Max podcast. My name is Lerato Macheta.
And I'm Petola Macheta. Guys, we just want to say shout out to Spotify. Can you see the goodies behind us for including us as part of their summer campaign? Thank you, Spotify.
Absolutely. So excited about that. Guys, if you're not aware, this very podcast is available on Spotify, so make sure that you go and stream it there. Shout out to you, Spotify. We appreciate you. We love you. Now, today we are going to be getting into quite a heavy topic, and I hope that we're going to do it justice. So today we are speaking about when childhood traumas haunt your adult relationships.
Sure. And guys, just to give you a definition of what childhood trauma is, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, it is the experience of an event by a child that is emotionally painful or distressful and which often result in lasting mental and physical effects. This is how it has been defined by the National Institute of Mental Health. That is hectic. And I think, sure. So when Rat and I sort of had a light bulb moment to talk about this, to have this conversation, was when we had a heart-to-heart about 2 days ago.
Yeah, we had a great time.
No, I mean, it wasn't confrontational or anything, but it was just like, oh my word, okay, so this is what happened as a result of a childhood trauma that you experience, right? But I think being a black child, having grown up in a black family, I would imagine that 80% of us have gone through some sort of trauma.
Sure.
Right? And for me, I'll take you through my personal experience. For me, it was the name calling, but as a form of endearment. I don't know where black people get this. I mean, where I grew up, guys, go Block F, Soshanguve, shout out. We had a guy 2 streets from our house,
proud.
babe. I'm very proud, me. We had a guy 2 streets from my house, babe. This guy was called Skobonyana. Don't laugh. So
I'm not laughing.
Translation, Skobonyana means a little ugly person.
Little ugly one.
Like, really? And you know,
Wait, why was he called Skobonyana? Let's start there.
Back in the day, I think the standard of beauty was light-skinned and obviously fair. And so he didn't match the standard of beauty according to society.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
And you also have names like Abo Fats.
Yeah.
You have names like Abo Small.
Sure.
And I find that these words, like the name calling, people use them as terms of endearment, but I find them to be a form of bullying that people don't really address.
Sorry, and the people that are being called those names don't find it endearing.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
But they end up owning up to those names so that you can't use that name against them.
They take the power
So they
out
take
of,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
But that really haunts them for many years. I think for me, growing up, I was called. So I was chubby, right? So I was a chubby girl, and I was called names like.
Everybody's going, you weren't chubby.
No, I was, and I was called names like Chloe.
Hey, wena.
Like, guys, Chloe is an elephant.
Sheesh.
Are you laughing at me?
No, I'm not laughing.
Oh.
Why do you think I'm laughing?
Because Lerato laughs when he's uncomfortable.
Yes, I laugh at the wrong time.
It's like a nervous laughter.
Yes,
So
yes.
I'm looking at you.
That's not happening right now.
Every time you put your hand on your mouth, I'm like, what are you doing?
No, I'm listening.
Don't you laugh?
Attentively.
So there was another name that I was called. So Chloe is like big, right? And I also had bow legs. So they used to call me Magwegwe.
Yeah.
Magwegwe basically mean the bow-legged one.
Yeah.
And I had so many names, and none of them were attractive names.
Sure.
And I was called these names by family, by my cousins, by, there was another one, they used to call me Sfene. Sfene means pig, is it a pig snout?
I actually don't know.
What is this? Is it a pig snout?
A pig snout, yeah. I just didn't know that's what Sfene meant.
I was called pig snout, right? And it was just normal. And I would come and they'd be like, ke ole Sfene. And for me at the time, I thought it was normal because no one would call anyone to order
For sure.
for those names. And I didn't realize just how that bullying affected me in my later years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened between us? Because that's where you started. Now everybody's going, what happened? So what happened made us...
I needed to give, and we'll unpack it also because
Yeah.
we're talking about childhood traumas,
For
right?
sure.
So I think because that was your childhood trauma, I had to sort of unpack the
sure.
childhood trauma that I went through.
For sure.
So we were talking about Lehakwe. So we're talking about Lehakwe. So Lehakwe is our eldest daughter. She is 8 years old. And over the past couple of days, she's just been expressing how she feels about certain things in her life. And Lerato was away, and I called him and I said, babe, your child is going through the most, and I don't know how to deal with it, right? But she's very expressive. She knows exactly what she's feeling and why she's feeling it. And Lerato was so excited about it, and he was like, oh my gosh, this girl, that's amazing for her to be so in touch with her emotions. And I said, well, in a world that we live in, I'm not sure if there's room for a person to be that emotional. So that's where the conversation started.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want me to carry on?
Yeah.
All right. So at which point I was just acting in a theater play in the Free State. And so I came back. We had that conversation over the phone, and then we were sitting together, and then my wife continued to unpack it for me. And my wife was quite worried about it, saying that, she really feels like Lehakwe might need to toughen up because of the cruel world that we live in. And I then shared with her a story of one of our co-stars who when we were chatting about her, when we were talking about her, we ended up describing her as pure, and just speaking about how she just has a pureness of heart, a pureness of spirit, how she dances without reservation, how she cries pretty much at anything that moves her. Excuse me.
Sure.
How she feels unreservedly. And then we then started speaking about how she's the kind of person that we would be worried about living in this world. And yet we just marveled at how protected she was despite the person that she grew to be. And we just, it taught me a lesson that actually maybe there is room for somebody to be exactly who they are according to the way that God created them. At that point, my wife took offense. I don't know
I was
if
very
that's
offended.
Yeah,
I was so touched. I was like, what?
Yeah, at which point my wife took offense.
Yeah.
Because for one, I was speaking sort of beam-eyed about this experience that I had. And in that moment, she reflected on how she was that person when we met. And I didn't give her the space to be that person. I was the person that communicated not only in words but also in my actions how she needed to get over it. And she basically communicated to me in that moment how unimpressed she was at my description of this person and how I needed to allow Lehakwe to be herself.
Sorry to interject, my love. More than anything, I don't think I was unimpressed. I was actually hurt. I remember I actually became teary-eyed, because it was a reminder of the person that I was. And I felt like I couldn't be that person, because you would get frustrated, at that person, and you would think, oh my gosh, can she stop crying already? Can she toughen up already?
I'm so sorry, guys. And that's exactly what it was. I won't deny it. But in that moment, I then communicated to my wife that I was wrong to do that. And I apologize for doing that. But I knew exactly why I did that. Because I, like my wife, was very in touch with my emotions as a kid. And the world taught me that I needed to get over it. And so there was a part of me that was shutting up the child in me through her. You know, there was a part of me that I had experienced a trauma, and I was leveling my experience onto her and saying, no, you don't get to cry. You don't get to be emotional. You don't get to be overly emotional. You don't get to feel, you know, when it comes to this, because, and you know, with the greatest intention, because I was like, we need to survive this world, you know, but I was wrong. I was wrong. And today I know better. And unfortunately, that is now a trauma that I put my wife through within our marriage in her adult years.
Yeah. And what happens with trauma is that it becomes vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Because now I'm putting my trauma now, if I'm not careful, I would put my trauma on Lahagwe.
Yeah.
You know, to not allow her to operate on the level that God created her to be like,
sure.
you need to toughen up. But what if that is her ministry, her feeling,
her softness,
and her being the person that she is? That's how she's going to reach people.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because I always say that we try so hard to fit in when we were born to stand out. And standing out is very intimidating.
Yeah.
Standing out, especially when you're still finding yourself, is something that is not desirable. If anything, you just want to kind of fit in the crowd and just get along with everyone, you know. But you know, I would like for us to encourage our kids to stand out, you know. And if you're a feely person, then be that. If you are outspoken, you know, then be that. If naturally you're a tough person, what we don't want to do is dumb you down and say, yo, calm down. You know, that's the worst thing that we could do.
Yeah.
You know, we need to encourage the very essence of your nature.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
I think what we do right in our house, babe, is that we affirm our kids.
Yeah.
We encourage them. And I think going back to my childhood trauma, guys, I need to talk about my childhood
Go for
trauma.
it.
It was very traumatic, but I only unpacked how traumatic it was in my adult years.
Yeah.
So I remember I could never identify with beauty growing up.
Which is wild.
Because it's not something that was associated with me, right? Because I had all these names that people had given me, and they were all negative names, by the way.
Yeah.
And my sister was like the beautiful one. My sister, light skin, you know, according to the standard of beauty. She had straight hair.
Yeah.
I was this tomboyish, chubby, and all these things. And I think the one thing that really helped me was that I was really smart.
Sure.
So people always praised me on how smart I was.
For
right?
sure.
And I remember when I came into my own, for some reason, when I got to high school, I shed the weight off. You know, obviously, possibly it was baby weight. And I straightened my hair. And I remember the only time I started identifying with beauty was when people started validating me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that came from within. And I
Yeah.
can see how that pattern of seeking validation followed me throughout high school, throughout varsity. And that's when I found myself also in a very toxic relationship with someone who was very, what's the word, is it narcissistic?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what happens with narcissists is that they can identify that broken child in you.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like they sort of, what's the word that I'm looking for, babe?
I don't know.
Pray. So, I thought you could finish my sentences.
I can most of the time.
So they prey on people that lack something in them. But at the time, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And this person was, in the beginning, they validate you. Apparently, psychologists...
They build you up to break you down.
Psychologists call it love bombing. So they shower you with love and compliments and attention, but not for your... not to make you feel good, but to manipulate you. And
Sure.
then they start breaking you down. They start invalidating you.
Yeah.
And because that validation was now gone, I stayed in this relationship because I didn't think anyone else would love me. Right? Because my worth came from being validated.
For sure.
And when I started going for therapy, because as an adult, I also suffered from anxiety, right? And then we traced that back to my childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so crazy because, sorry, I just had a thought quickly. I was like, I wonder if he was aware that he was doing that. But anyway, that's another
Yeah.
thing for another day. So what then
Maybe
ended
you
up
should ask
happening?
him.
No. So, and then what ended up happening was there would be things that I would do that would remind my wife of that relationship that she had. But my intention was completely different.
Sure.
My intention would be completely innocent.
Yeah.
But just because it looked like a trauma
Yeah.
that she had gone through, that she had experienced, then, you know, I would kind of, what do they say? She would bleed on the person that didn't cut her,
Yeah.
you know, which
Sure.
was me at the time. And I think I'm glad that we spoke about it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were always open to say, I've been here before and I'm not going to do this again.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was just like, what's the big deal? Like, relax. Why are you so
Yeah.
dramatic? You know what I mean? But it
Sure.
it took me time to realize that, oh, that's actually your lived experience, you know, and it was,
Sure.
and just because it was not my lived experience,
Yeah.
it was very difficult for me to identify it because I'm not that guy.
And I
You know.
love what you're saying, babe, when you're talking about lived experiences, because one of the ways that someone can help a partner overcome, or maybe when they're dealing with their childhood trauma, is to believe them.
For sure.
Is to believe them when a partner tells you that I went through this.
Yeah.
For it to mean something to you.
What makes it difficult
Yeah.
for your partner to partner with you in finding your healing is when the partner is feeling accused
Okay.
of doing something that they're not doing, whereas it's attached to your trauma.
And I think also
Yeah.
what's very interesting about that, my love, is that with trauma is also attached to triggers, or triggers are
For
attached
sure.
to trauma.
For sure.
So when you see a red flag, that's why some
Yeah,
people
yeah.
go through traumatic stress. They have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
So when they see
PTSD,
something, or if something rattles them that looks like an experience that they went through,
For
then
sure.
it takes them back
Takes them back, yeah.
to that
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, it's not only that. So I just want to share something as well. So one of my childhood traumas was I was introduced to pornography before the age of 10. I must have been like 9
Sure.
or 8. And this was something that I carried all the way into marriage. And I didn't know that it was something to be dealt with. You know, I didn't believe in the addiction. I didn't believe that I was sick. I didn't think that I needed to trace it back to something from my childhood. I didn't,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I was just like, no, it's one of those sins that you'll get over. You know what I'm saying? And I know how we've spoken before about, well, you've joked and you've said, Lerato is a prude,
Yeah.
and I remember that, I remember just thinking to myself, I know why,
Sure.
because anything that my introduction to sex was very defiled. And so anything that is connected to that energy and that spirit, I don't want to bring it into
Into
my
the
household, into my marriage.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm very protective of it. I didn't know that until you started saying, dude, why is, like, chill, it's not a thing. And when I went away and I thought about it, I was like, oh, that's why.
And it's so interesting, baby, that you're saying that, because it's that trigger.
Yeah.
So then because you don't want to. And what's interesting is that because porn has been so commercialized,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's everywhere. It's so accessible.
For sure.
And I mean, some people might even think, why are we making such a big deal about it? You know,
Yeah.
because people consume pornography freely. But
For
I think
sure.
one day we'll talk about really the dangers of pornography. Maybe perhaps have a whole installment
Yeah.
about it, because it is really a trauma.
Yeah.
You know, and it causes a lot of issues in relationships and
For
in
sure.
marriages and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's very, like, that's deep. Hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
actually
just,
never told me
no.
that's the trigger.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, obviously,
I didn't know
Ah,
until I thought about it.
sure.
And this only hit me a couple of months ago.
Really?
Actually, yeah. And I was like, oh, that's actually why.
Sure.
You know, that I'm so protective of the sanctity of my marriage.
Yeah.
And the purity of it. That there's something about that makes me feel like I'm defiling it. And then I thought to myself, but why? And by the way, talking about sex and having sexy talk and you know what I mean, like, you know, whatever it is, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it. Like,
Yeah.
it's a healthy thing,
Yes.
you know, to have in
Yeah.
relationships. But I then had to identify like, but why are you like
Why are you
this?
so shy?
Yeah.
Like so timid.
For
about
sure,
it.
you know. And I wasn't always.
Yeah.
So in my previous relationships, I wasn't. But I wasn't protective about those previous relationships.
Sure. I get it.
You know?
I get it.
Yeah.
But do you also think that, because also sometimes what happens is when we have gone through childhood traumas, how comfortable are we to talk about them to our partners?
Well, you have to identify it first, and that's sometimes the hard part. You know, you have to identify this. You know, it's kind of that thing where you go to a support group and you have to stand up and you have to say, "Hi, my name's Roto Macheta and I'm an addict."
Sure.
You know, you first have to identify it.
Yeah.
You first have to make peace with the fact that, oh my gosh, I'm actually dealing with something. It's only then that you can go to your partner and say, hey, you know, and 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to go to your partner after you've started to deal with it. You know what I mean? So that might be another journey, you know, before you go to your partner, because I'm so sorry, because sometimes, even in relationships, and this is what I've learned, sometimes your partner can't be there for you in the way that you need them to be there for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you need to make peace with something, and then by the time you speak to them about it, it's because you are already on the journey, and if they are in a place where they can't deal with it or they can't handle it, you need to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, this is a new experience for them, and they may not respond in the way that you need them to respond. So do yourself a favor sometimes, and I've done this, you know, quite often. I've gone away and kind of dealt with something, and also dealt with the idea that the response that I need from my wife might not be
What you need.
what I need.
Yeah.
But I've already made peace with that by the time I've gone to her and said, listen, I'm dealing with this.
And babe, I really love what you're saying, because sometimes as partners, when you come to me, if you had to come to me with a childhood trauma,
Yeah.
we want to fix.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that people must steer clear of. If a partner comes to you and say, you know, I experienced this as a child, don't try to fix. Don't try to be prescriptive as well, baby.
Unless they say, please, can you help me?
But even in the helping, you can't fix. I feel like
Okay.
a person has to go through the emotions and deal with it by themselves, because we try to get there and fix and put a plaster on it.
For sure.
Right? But then we're not dealing with the root cause. And also what we do as partners, I used to do that where I'm prescriptive without even understanding the problem.
Yeah, so you'll say, do this,
Do
do
this,
this.
right?
Have you called this person? Why don't you?
Yes.
You know,
and I found that, you know, I touched earlier on my anxiety, and when I eventually identified that my anxiety was as a root cause of a low self-esteem from childhood and from constantly needing validation. I remember when I started working, that's when I had met you, and I was at the height of my anxiety. And I remember you just didn't get it. You just didn't get
at
it.
all.
But you shared something with me.
Yeah.
Yes.
What did I share with you?
So you shared with me that as a child, you had a lot of anxiety.
Struggled with anxiety.
So when you met me,
Yeah.
that childhood trauma, you were rejecting
I was
it.
rejecting.
And you were just like, you're not going to take me back
I was
there.
rejecting my anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously you
And
probably...
you were a representative of my anxiety.
Yes.
So I was like,
And as a result, I felt alone. I felt
Yeah.
misunderstood. I
For
felt
sure.
unsupported.
Yeah.
And I remember...
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, babe, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, we're about childhood trauma. And I
Yeah.
think it's so important that, like you're saying, a lot of us don't know that we have these traumas.
We don't.
Until we
know.
start acting out
Yeah.
in relationships, in
Yeah.
marriage.
And society.
Sorry, my love.
Sorry, go ahead,
we
go ahead.
start self-destructing as well.
Absolutely.
And we realize, oh, flip, this is attached to that experience.
And this is why, you know, I've been accused even in my marriage of being like an apologist, you know, for bad behavior, you know. But I just...
By me?
Well, I mean, yeah, if you'll know what I mean after I say what I say.
Okay.
So I just recognize that there's always a story, you know,
Yeah.
like there's always a
Yeah.
reason why people find themselves where they are.
Yeah.
And sometimes society then, in an effort, maybe, I'll be kind, you know, in an effort to kind of correct wrongs, you know, how they go about it is to judge you, you know, and you're either known as the village bicycle or you're a player or you're trash or, you know what I'm
Sure.
saying? And it's just, you know, I always want to find out like, what's up, you know, because I've been through my own things, you know, which I'll share in 10 years, you know, but like I've been through my own things and I've got a lot of empathy, you know, for people. And I'm like, I really just wonder what happened.
Yeah.
What happened to
Yeah.
you, you know,
Like what went
that
wrong?
even you can't pinpoint and you can't recognize,
Yeah.
you know, you don't know why you're behaving
Yeah.
the way that you're behaving. And 9 times out of 10,
Yeah.
it's childhood trauma.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you, baby, more
Yeah.
because a lot of people mask their childhood trauma with different things. You know, some people with drugs, with alcohol, with promiscuity, pornography, and all these things.
Yeah.
You know, because I think also the difficulty could also be that people don't want to deal with childhood traumas.
This is
Because
true.
it was so traumatic, they'd rather forget about it. And I think that's why some people delay getting help. Because they know that if they go and try to get help, they will have to revisit their past.
For sure. Yeah, my love, I love that you're saying that. And, you know, just to share some thoughts as we wrap up, you know, we just want to encourage you, you know, if you're in a relationship,
sorry.
the very first thing is, you know, don't judge your
Yeah.
partner, you know, be a partner to your partner,
Yeah.
you know, don't judge them, and believe them when they tell you that, listen, I am going through something, you know, find the best way to partner with them. But the very first thing is believe your partner. If they're telling you that, look, I'm kind of going through something. I made the mistake of dismissing my wife, not knowing that it was because of my traumas, you know. And I believed that I didn't believe her. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I actually believed that I didn't get it. And yet I was the one person that had to get it
Sure.
because I went through the same thing.
That is hectic. And another thing, I think, just to encourage, you know, couples out there or, you know, people that are assisting someone that's going through a childhood trauma, encourage that person to speak to someone.
For sure.
If they can't
Absolutely.
speak to you, just make sure that they are speaking to someone.
Yeah.
And don't be so desperate for them to speak to you. Just because
Yeah.
they're not speaking to you.
You don't have to be their savior.
It doesn't mean that they trust you any less.
Or love you any less.
Or love you any less. It just means that you're not the right person for the assignment, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
And
also
that's good. That's
pray
good.
pray for your partner. Continuously be on
Yeah.
your knees for your partner, praying for them to get through their childhood traumas.
I hope this was helpful.
I hope so too.
You know, it was something that
Yeah.
just, I suppose, came up between us, and,
Yeah.
you know, we thought to talk about it. And we've actually spoken about it more now than we did in that moment as well, you know.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think most of our conversations are really spirit-led.
Yeah.
So we just feel like, you know, God purposes, you know, things in our hearts and encourages us prompts us rather,
For sure.
to speak about certain things.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for joining
Yeah.
us. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on that notification bell. Wow! To know every single time we upload a new installment. Guys, we love you.
Yes,
We
love you
appreciate
so much.
We love your marriages. We love your relationships. We love your courting. We love just like, it's all love, guys. It's all love. We just want to see you be great, you know.
And we love the comments.
Yes.
You know, we love the
Yes.
comments, and I'm so excited. I'm seeing a lot more men in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
comment section,
Slowly but
which
surely.
is really, really exciting for
sure.
me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
you, my
I think it was
love.
very valuable.
Yeah.
Guys, we love you. Peace and blessings. One time, too real.
Oh, yeah.
Until next time, guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.